Hi, this is Dan Balser. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to this. That was the intro to Jasper County Blues by Brian Revels. And this is episode 316 of my podcast. This is a different one because on this episode, Brian will be interviewing me. By the way, if you stick around to the very end of this episode, you can hear Jasper County Blues by Brian Revels in its entirety. I'm recording this in my office, which sits squarely inside air quotes, office. It's kind of a closet. You may hear some noise while I'm talking. I'm going to try to keep this really quick. Again, this is with Brian Revels. You can check out Brian Revels at brianrevels.com or at brianrevelsmusic.com. This is the third episode where I have been interviewed instead of my doing the interviewing. And episode 50, which was 10 and a half years ago, questions were supplied by Jeff Petrosi. And episode 250, which was 2.5 years ago, I was interviewed by Maria Hodorkovsky. So I want to say one thing before we get to the conversation, because I think it's a really vibrant chat. It was much more of a conversation than an interview. I just got back to Atlanta from a weekend with my fraternity brothers. Now, I graduated from college in 1986, and I got to tell you, whatever stage you are in your life right now, nurture relationships, because I feel recharged, re-inspired, reinvigorated from reconnecting with relationships that have been a part of who I am for a very long time. Joey Weber and Alan Korn, I promise at some point you will hear on this podcast, not exactly sure how, but man, enjoy your life while you have it and enjoy your friends. Let's get straight to the chat with Brian Revels. Thanks so much for listening. Here we go.
All right, so I wanted to start with why I wanted to do this interview, like personally. I think it takes dedication to do anything consistently, and your podcast has been a huge resource for me. I'm a little bit of a latecomer to advertising, 30, and
You're 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, just comparatively. I'm not saying I'm older, any of that shit.
That's relatively older.
Yeah, right. And so having something like this podcast around to, be a fly on the wall for all these conversations was really beneficial. It really helped me get a grasp on the geography, right? I mean, you just had Rich fucking Silverstein in here.
Sitting right in that chair.
When I was listening to it, I was like, oh my God, this is like, what is the combined years of professional expertise that I'm listening to right now? Like 50?
A lot with Rich.
And you guys are, contemporaries as well, because you're like working now. And I had the thought, I was like, you know what? I'm contributing exactly as much to this conversation as I should be.
Right.
When I was listening to it. So
that's funny.
It was cool. Also, personally, there's a few things, and I've thrown these at you a number of times, that you have a way of saying little quips that just kind of stick for me.
That's cool.
So really one of my favorite things is the machine does not run out of the thing the machine makes.
Yeah.
That's something you come back to a lot, which was helpful for me to like go back to when I was like, I'm never gonna get a line. You know what I mean? Like
you're also a songwriter. You're not a guy who's written a song. There's not one song inside you.
Yeah, right. They keep coming. You also one of my favorite things you said about ads specifically. You said a good ad hits you when you see it, and then hits you again when you walk away. Hits you in the back of the head, and I was like, that's great. I like the sleepers. Right,
a good line will do that.
Right.
Because you're a punster. You like double meanings. So that's about sort of having a deeper double meaning.
Right.
It's like it means one thing, but then you realize, oh, no, it means something much bigger.
Right, and that's ultimately the stuff I appreciate more. I feel like sometimes my conversational pun stuff paints a not always flattering picture of me to people that don't know me as well. You know what I mean? Just because like, oh, the pun guy, like if we need puns, we'll call him. But it's like, that's just, I'm conversational with puns. Right. Like I look for the deeper stuff. And then you also said, if you think of it, you have to make it, which I loved.
I find that one to be really important.
So I've had a few hundred conversations with you, but I don't really know like your origin story.
Yeah.
What where exactly are you from?
Where was I born and reared?
Born in...
Right. I think you only raise plants and animals. I think humans are reared.
Really? It seems like it would be the other way around.
Right? I don't know. I grew up in Atlanta. I'm a Southerner. Okay. Yeah, I'm a Southerner by birth and third generation Atlantan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Birth order? You have siblings?
No, see, that's big. Huge question. I've said that on the podcast before. In my opinion, single biggest determinant of someone's personality is birth order.
Right. Well, I think that's why I have it here, is because I don't...
So what do you think?
I can't tell yours.
Can't tell?
I bet you're the oldest.
Yeah, firstborn.
Yeah.
Yes, it creates a lot of stress. It creates a sort of innate sort of sense that you have to make things okay all the time.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's because we all had 100% attention from our parents, and everything was kind of like, for their stress came onto us to make sure things were right, and that kind of like our earliest memories are on sort of having that attention or whatever.
How long were
I mean, it's not that long.
An only child.
Not that long, 3 years, but like, right. I just think it bakes in or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Even then, when you're 5 or 6 years old, your younger sibling is still really younger than you or whatever. So I kind of feel like, I don't know why that is, but yeah, I'm definitely.
I mean, that makes sense. You're like part of the team.
Yeah.
As
and then of course, when your parents get divorced and you're the oldest, you're sort of the man of the house at age 11 or whatever. That's not an awesome thing, but it kind of gives you this sort of sense of anxiety that things have to be right, or it's your fault, or that's your responsibility to make sure they are.
Sure. Yeah, I was raised an only child, so essentially I'm an only child. But I met two sisters and a brother, two half sisters and a brother when I was like 19.
That's weird.
It was weird. I was telling you, a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah. And I don't know how oldest of multiples is the same as an only child. Did you see Three Identical Strangers? Did you watch that movie? It's crazy.
Oh, about triplets separated at birth?
Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
I didn't. I think I scrolled past it.
Yeah, I think you should stop next time.
I also wanted to ask you about Lisa, your wife.
Yeah.
She's amazing. She's a champion of the 3% movement, equality in general, director of She Says ATL. Just like very gung-ho. And you guys met at Portfolio School.
We met at school, yeah. Met at Portfolio School.
What's that been like having...
Oh, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard because we're both firstborn, so we're both type A.
Oh.
We're both copywriters, and we started off very competitively. I kind of feel like you have to be...
Oh, that's cool. But there's that shared admiration.
Well, there's a shared understanding of the struggle of the career. There's a shared understanding that, like, I just lost my weekend because of a deadline, and you're not taking it personally. It's not like you have a partner who doesn't understand what advertising will do to a person.
Right.
And one of my favorite moments was she worked on the Wonder Bra account when she was in New York, and she did a TV shoot at Coney Island overnight. Like, the only time they could shoot was, the idea had to be shot at night, but they were at Coney Island overnight. And the next morning I was off to a trade show in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And I come down to get my car at before the sun came up. I don't know, it was probably 5:45 or 6 o'clock. And there's two town cars out front. One's empty for me, and the other one had just pulled up with her in it. So she gets out of the town car, and I say, "Hey, have a good day." She's like, "Yeah, text me when you land." And I get in the other car, and that was it. It's like two sort of ships passing in the night, two town cars working in advertising, living the life. And here's the thing about that whole time in New York. One thing that I'm really glad that I did when we lived in New York, was when I would say, like, "Hey, I'm a big time New York ad guy." And I would say it jokingly, like, it sounds like a douchey thing to say, but like, I kind of enjoyed the fact that, like, we're making it in New York and making ads that people see. And I kind of feel like people get so in the weeds with just the shit you have to do. And I had those moments. I mean, if Lisa's listening to this, she'll say, like, you weren't happy, you weren't enjoying yourself then. But I definitely had those moments where I'm like, I would say that to her, it's like, you're a big time ad person, like, you're a big time New York ad person. Because she had an ad that was on the back of a magazine that someone was reading. You could see it on TV perfectly on Friends. Like, it was an Absolute ad that was actually on screen.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's cool.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Even just on the sub.
Yeah,
on the subway. Cool. That shit is cool.
So I think that, to answer your original question, I think that when you choose a partner, It's like, I remember this, I asked my grandmother this when and my grandfather had been married for 60 years or some crazy shit.
Oh, wow.
And I said, what's the deal? Like, how did you make it? And she looks at me, and I was very close with my grandmother, and she said, Dan, there are just so many things you have to overlook. And I think with a career and with a life partner, you just have to deal with, here's some things I can live with.
Right.
And because you're never going to get 10 out of 10 things. Right. So you got to figure out, okay, these are the 3 or 4 that I'm not going to get. Are you okay with that?
Right.
And I'm not going to say there's anything about my wife that I'm having to deal with, but part of it is that we're in the same career. We started off we were very competitive. And I think also it's just kind of stupid to both put all your eggs in one industry basket, because when advertising is not doing well, you're both laid off. So right. That's a little bit of a thing, but I wouldn't trade it. Having that sort of a what's the best word I can think of? It's not partner. It's like a sounding board, or sort of that intellectual resource that sort of, I don't live with a mentor, but I live with someone that can kind of be have a rational perspective on the bullshit that I have to deal with sometimes, like right. clients that kill shit or partners that are terrible. She gets it, and it's really nice to have that sort of resource right there in the house to kind of talk things through.
That's one of my favorite things about Portfolio School, is just to have these peers, people that I respect, and we can shoot the shit and kind of vent, and get through stuff like that.
I don't know if that's what you were asking.
Yeah, no, it was exactly what I was asking. So love because of, not in spite of, or does that go the other way around?
Yeah, you're not loving. You love someone in spite of things or because of things. It's both. You have to have both.
Right. There's some Hallmark movie quote. Atlanta or New York?
New York for sure.
Yeah, New York. Miss it every day.
Yeah, a lot, often. Yeah, New York is the best place in the world.
They don't have the Mercedes-Benz.
They don't have that. That's the thing. If I weren't here, I'd be having FOMO for sure, because I grew up here, and like Atlanta United, and just some of the even music, even just things that are happening in Atlanta, the Beltline. It's just, Atlanta's become so much fucking cooler than it used to be.
It really is awesome, and for me, it kind of sucks because I need to leave.
Probably temporarily.
Yeah. It'll just be a good time. Single, no kids, and never lived outside of Georgia in like 30 years.
Yeah,
so it just seems like
you might should.
Yeah, it seems like something I have to do.
Well, we went to New York for a year, and it turned into 10. And it's just like I didn't know what I didn't really want to. And once you get there, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. It's stimulating, inspiring, and you work with just the smartest people. It's great.
I bet. What is that? Where you got your first ad job?
First creative ad job. I mean, I had worked in advertising for 3 years before I went to ad school, but I was on traffic and print production, and then I got laid off and was an account guy for almost a year. And the creative director said, "No, you're a copywriter. Go to ad school." He was teaching at Portfolio Center, and he started me there. He said, "You got to go to Portfolio Center." So that was it.
Did you have a favorite job in that 10-year span? Is there one that stands out?
Yeah, for sure. Anderson and Lemke, Business to Business, and this came up. When did this come up? Really recently, about finding the place where you can do what you want to do and not worrying about how it looks or how you think people are going to judge your career. I just talked about this last episode with who was the guy that was just here? With Diana. Yeah. About her move to go into health care stuff or health
Patience
stuff.
And Purpose.
Yeah, and I went to an agency that, you come home to Atlanta for Thanksgiving, your cousins have never seen any of the work you've done, but all the work you do sells, and you get to meet the clients, and you get to write copy, the things that I really wanted to do. Right. So that was by far the best. And I think anyone who worked at that agency in those years will tell you it was like advertising nirvana. And I've talked about that on the podcast. Anderson and Lemke was just amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Cool. Where do you think... Not where is advertising going, but what do you think about that? It's like changing every day. There's all the technology. There's all these ebbs and flows. Do you have any overarching?
That's interesting you're asking, because today's Monday, and this Thursday I'm moderating a panel at the 4As down at City Winery. About like creativity and technology, and like where they data, tech, and creativity. And the questions are sort of how has technology and data affected the creative process? How does technology and data change what a creative does and how we deliver it. I don't know. All I know is that it still always has to come back. Although I'll say this is an added element. It used to be, what does the brand stand for? What are they selling? What does it mean? What's the strategy? Now it's like, where do the people that use it live? How do they live?
Right.
So I think that it's the most frustrating part about teaching it to me is that there aren't the same universal skills that there used to be, because stuff that wins awards, the solutions are so specifically tied to that brand thing that it's kind of hard to say, well, we could do that for this way. It's like, well, no, not really, unless you reverse engineer how they came up with that idea and then come up with a whole new one. So is
that exciting, or is that daunting to you?
I think about? As a teacher, it's really daunting. As a creative, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Because as a creative, I believe the end game as a creative, and everyone will have their own end game. But for me, the end game is sitting down across the table from a client and trying to solve their problems with creatively. We don't know what we're going to do. We're just going to figure out the problem and figure out how to solve it.
Right.
That to me is really exciting, but trying to teach people the craft of advertising, what's the craft anymore? That's the hardest part. That's by far the hardest part. And I still think you have to be able to write, you have to be able to design, but it may show up in a radically different way than it ever did. I actually asked Diana the same question. First question for Diana was, what is advertising? Like, what is it?
Really?
Yeah, because I'm struggling to define it, actually, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah, it's a bit nebulous.
It's still there. I mean, there's a lot of money in it. Still a good career.
I'm gonna steal one from It's Only Fucking Advertising. Do you have a worst meeting ever?
Oh God, yes, for sure. I don't know if I've told it on your podcast.
Is it the Kodak one?
No, I worked on Fujifilm. We had, that was death by 1,000 cuts. There was no bomb.
Okay.
There was no bomb.
Okay.
And the client that I worked for, the woman that we worked for, was phenomenal. She was really great. I think she was up against a difficult culture.
Sure.
So that to me was sort of like, you kind of knew that going in.
Right.
We had a meeting, and I'm not going to name the client until this isn't recording anymore.
Okay.
They were in rural, I'm not even going to give you the idea, but they were in rural Pennsylvania, and we went out there and presented. It was a 3-hour drive. And we went in with this dog and pony show with easels and everything. I mean, big printouts and everything. And we'd run everything by our client contact, all of it. That's right. They were launching a new technology. And we go in there and we present this. I'm getting nervous telling the story. So we go in there and we present this work. The presentation was great. The work was really strong.
Right.
And they were a startup, and they were scrappy. And we came up with this idea that was sort of like this, almost like a revolutionary tone. Like they're kind of upending the industry.
Right.
And we presented all this work to this big team. I mean, we were in this conference room that was like right out of a movie. There were like 8 people on either side of this really long table. And the CEO, maybe even owner, but for sure CEO, comes in kind of late just for the presentation, sits down, watches the whole presentation. And people, you can tell, are nervous. They don't want to talk after we presented. And he said, everybody's going around the table kind of saying what they wanted. And this brand manager guy said something positive. He said, this is just the kind of work we need. This is like, we're an underdog brand, and this is going to set us apart. Finally, the CEO says, who liked this work? And this guy kind of timidly raises his hand. He goes, I don't like it. In fact, I hate all of it. I'll never use any of it. And he gets up and he walks out. And we're just sitting there.
Wow.
We're just sitting there like this, like, what the fuck just happened? Like, first of all, our client contact, why wouldn't you have, what? She's like, I don't know. You guys need to get your stuff out of here and go. So
I'm not sure if you're safe. Go ahead.
So we pack up our stuff, drive back to New York. It's me and my art director partner and the account manager.
Was it just like a quiet?
No, we're just like
drive
kind
back?
of stunned. We don't know what to do. And so finally, we're almost back to the city, like 2.5 hours later, and the phone call comes in from the client contact. And she's like, yeah, we get what you guys did, but like, you know, in the late 60s, the CEO guy was really supportive of this Vietnam War, and he thought everything you guys did felt like you were like disrespecting authority. And that this tone was very like anti-war hippie stuff, and it made him really uncomfortable, and he's not going to use any of this work. We're like, what? landmine did we just step on that nobody could have anticipated? So we did what any creative would do. It's like, well, is it the art direction? Maybe we'll just make it look a little bit more modern. It's like, no, we had to redo the entire thing. And I think I might have said this on a podcast recently too. My biggest, hardest lesson to learn as a young junior was, when your shit is dead, your shit is fucking dead. Start with a new piece of paper.
Not CPR.
No, there's no polishing turds. There's no fixing, tweaking. It's done. You're done. That's out.
Yeah.
Now you can spitefully sabotage yourself by doing something shitty that will sell because you're pissed off. Or you can say, all right, now my assignment is to do this differently. And I think we did a decent campaign that ended up running. But my attitude at the time was like, fuck them, I'm doing something shitty, whatever. Right. So that was the worst meeting ever. And it was really just like, I don't know, honestly, how we possibly could have done anything differently. I don't know how we could have anticipated.
Did you end up selling something to them?
Yeah, we ended up running a pretty decent campaign. That's a story that I can tell.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
I have other bad moments.
Right.
Because we're full of bad moments. And the other one that was really bad was me being immature. And I'll talk about that off the record.
Okay, I'll have to remember.
This one, I don't know what we could have done differently.
Man, that it's a double-edged sword to find something that fulfills you, or like at least lets you use your creative passions, because then everything is so much more precious and stuff. And it's like,
you think about your musical career?
No, because that's different, because there's no one in the boat with me. I just write every song, and it's feast or famine, and it's all me.
You like that?
I'm about to finish portfolio school, so what do you think?
Right.
No,
You'll never stop that, will you?
No, definitely not. No, I should be putting out a record a few months after I graduate.
Nice. We have never introduced you, by the way, on this podcast.
Oh, that was probably
short-sighted. Brian Revels. I may do an intro.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I am Brian Revels, copywriting student here at the Circus. And I love it. I actually, I don't know if this sounds like cliche or is a little self-sabotagey to say, but I kind of came here for a girl. Not, the girl didn't go here. It wasn't chasing one, but I just had this girlfriend who was from a much more comfortable life than I was. Like I could sleep on a pallet in the floor almost indefinitely. I could like live in a van and do the music thing. And she was like, yeah, it's really cute. But and I really wanted to go the whole. But the two best things she ever did for me was to encourage me to go back to school, because I found this, fell head over heels, and then the second best was that she dumped me, because otherwise I would have been so trying work. I wouldn't have had the bandwidth to do well here, well in that relationship, and well.
Yeah, I see a lot. I don't want to discourage anyone from ever going. Yeah, I don't want to discourage anyone from going to ad school with a significant other, but I've seen equal numbers of people coming with significant others. Relationships fail as relationships succeed, at least equal numbers, if not more.
Yeah, and
I think you know why, though.
Why?
Why do you think that happens?
Why is it equal, or why they fail?
Let's just say why do you think people who come here with a significant other that relationship ends up failing?
Wait, both people attend the school?
Let's say one of them does.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard when you're getting like swept up in like a new passion and a new world, and you're kind of like, you're either shortchanging that new world, right, by going home every day to this significant other and not going to the networking things and staying late, or you're shortchanging the relationship by going all in.
I think, let me just say this: there's a lot that have survived, and thrived. People come here married, and they graduate married, and they're awesome, and everything's great. There are people who've come here with their significant other, they leave together, and it's great. And there are people who had boyfriends the whole time or girlfriends the whole time, graduated, and they're still together, and it's awesome. I think the ones that fail, let's just say it's maybe less than half, but the ones that fail is because I believe that when you go to a program like this, you find out who you really are.
Yeah.
You find out really, the students evolve so much in 2 years, it's unbelievable. a little bit less for a 30-year-old guy than for a 22 or 23-year-old who's coming in here, who probably isn't with the right person to begin with. So,
yeah. It was actually.
I actually found mine at school, so I mean, like that happens too.
Right.
A lot.
Right. I'm kind of. I know. I'm kind of. I'm envious.
I've done 2 weddings already from alumni who met at school. I've officiated 2 weddings.
No way. That's what I was going to ask. You attended, or that's crazy. So a couple questions that actually some of these you've kind of already answered.
I tend to do that. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. A common roadblock that you see students or young ad pros struggle with, or even manifest.
It's a great question.
It's like their own.
It's a great question. Other people's voices, number 1. Other people's voices.
Feedback.
Nope. Other people's voices in their minds about what they should or shouldn't be doing, and where they should or shouldn't be living, and where they should or shouldn't be working.
Sure.
And I think that I've talked about that ad nauseum, but I feel like maybe this is just me, but I think that back to the Anderson and Lemke answer, I feel like for me, who was doing really well at Ogilvy and Mather, working on big brands, and a guy who did really well in school, to go to an agency that's going to be producing I'm going to be producing a bunch of work no one's ever going to see. I just thought people were going to say, like, why would you do that? Why would you go work on business to business? Or someone else, like maybe my father's mine was in my head that I'm not never making enough money, or that I'm not in a leadership role. I think people have to make decisions. They have to know who they are and what's important to them, and not go be a creative director because they feel like that's the thing they're supposed to do, and not work at this place because it looks good on the resume to other people. And I think that's one thing that gets in the way, in a major way. And I think now, okay, that's number 1. Number 1, but that's professional. I think for students, the number 1, and the answer has changed. The answer in 2020 or 2019, whatever we're in, is different than it would have been in 2015, 2012. When I started this podcast in 2007. 2007.
That's when I graduated high school.
Right. When I started this podcast, that answer was radically different. The answer to that question now, and I've talked about this on the podcast, sorry listeners who've heard this, is that people try they're scared to do it wrong. And they want to do it right, and they want to be good. And therefore, I think you have basically constricted the opportunity of originality. You've constricted your creative flow because you're doing something that you are playing it safe all the fucking time. And that's number 1. And I think it's because I don't know if this is social media where like you're not going to post the picture of the bad version of your picture because you can see up your nostril. Right. Everything's curated. Therefore, everything that's presented in class is overly curated to the point of being just dulled down to bullshit, and you basically denied yourself the chance to be an idiot. And thankfully, you don't have that. You don't suffer from that.
I don't, and I learned a lot about that from living with Christian Zerbel for a year.
Christian's a great example.
He has, and that's why
Christian doesn't give a shit what you think.
No, that's why Christian Barrett hired him. 7th quarter and.
Right, and you know what? I'm sorry.
Love that kid.
I want to say I'm sorry for any listeners who think that I play favorites with Christian. Number 1, I'm sorry if you think that, but let's just be honest. If you know Christian, then you can realize why I'm attracted to the guy. But I think part of it is his willingness to throw out idiotic bullshit that has a foot in intelligence, right, all the time. It's not like he's just doing random shit. Same thing, honestly, with Phil. I mean, Phil. People think that Phil is just a dopey idiot. But all of his dopey shit grows out. It grows out of very intelligent soil.
Yeah, have one conversation with Phil, and you know that he's not.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So I think that we shouldn't be, Brian. We should not be able to sit here and name the good ones count them on one hand. Everybody should be coming in here and being messy, much, much, much messier.
Right.
Because it's so easy to clean up stupidity than to make something safe good. Mm-hmm. It's so much easier to make something stupid work.
Also, we're students, so like you don't need the safe here. You know what I mean?
I think so. That's what I think. Right.
Man, yeah, I love Christian. He and I
also think there's a lot of other impediments. I think people get territorial. I think people feel like they have to have the idea. They don't realize another person's idea can be theirs if it's their partner.
Right.
So there's a lot of things I think that contribute to people not being as good as they could be.
You know what was one of my, and I've said this a few times, and I think I keep saying it out loud just to see if I still think I'm right, but one of the best things I got out of the circus was how to take feedback, and I don't mean how to take it without crying. I mean how to know I'm going to listen to that part, but not that part. I'm going to use that part, but not that part. I'm not listening to anything you said. I'm listening to everything you know what I mean? Like picking who's helping you the most and who's not. Because I've seen so many people kill an idea or a move
because they said it wasn't working.
Yes, exactly,
right?
exactly.
I mean,
insert name here said it didn't work, and I was like, well, like, do you agree? You know, like that matters. Ultimately, it's our book.
Well, that's a huge struggle, and I think that comes back to what we were talking about. I don't think that people have formed their own confidence, and I think they're figuring it that we know better. And
it's hard to do.
I think it's hard to do, but I think that have you been a creator for a long time, making things?
Are you asking me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember being in third grade writing songs. I had two friends, and we were like big into Boys to Men, and we were like trying to sing R&B songs.
But I think that's a reason. I think that the fact that you've made stuff, you're putting stuff up that you've made to see what the reaction is, versus putting stuff up to see if it's working at all, or to get it approved, or to get it like the seal of like go on. It's like, no, I know what I'm doing. I just want you to tell me if it's making sense to you, and if not, let me make it better or whatever.
Right. It's kind of like that. There's a big movement for like play, right? Being a thing, and I think that's such a huge part. Is just
a big point. Yeah, good
right.
Point. Yeah.
Just to enjoy the craft of crafting. Where would you want to go today if you were a junior?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a great question. If I were leaving here to start a job, wow, it's really hard to put myself in those shoes because I'm so in what I want out of my freelance projects. Like if I were going to leave here, where would I want to go? It's very hard for me to think about where I'd want to start. I think if I'd want to start somewhere where I would have an opportunity to fail, but also have a writer above me who could make me a better writer. I think I never really had that. It is going now.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Are we positive?
Yeah.
Have we pushed the pause and the record?
So listeners, okay, long-time listeners will realize that for the last 12 years I've struggled with technology, and right where I said something about I never had that. I never had worked for a copywriter or creative director. The recorder just stopped recording. I guess we filled up the memory card, and then we recorded a new ending, and that didn't record because I guess I was so rattled by the fail that I forgot to hit record. So we're going to redo. So this part that you're hearing now is taking place 2 days after everything you've heard prior in this conversation. So we're 2 days later. I think I'm having something allergic in my throat. I'm kind of feeling a little weird, maybe under the weather. So I'm not even the same guy I was 2 days ago. Everything's been processed and reconfigured. So should we finish that part about the job thing? So like
it was a question that was important to me. I was interested in it.
I think in retrospect, I think it is really important. It would have been important, although you kind of have to put everything on the scale and make a decision based on everything you have to choose from. You can't have everything. Right. So like, to me, I feel like if I had a creative director who was a really good writer that made me a better writer, that probably would have been a good thing. And I would say the same thing for an art director. Look for people whose design you appreciate. And I don't think it was like a mistake or that I have a regret or anything about that. Like, I don't feel like it was an error. But I think that where I would go, your question is where would I go? And I think that I would go somewhere where I was needed, where I had opportunity to make things, and where I had support to improve. One other thing I want to say about what we talked about earlier, we mentioned Phil, but we didn't mention Phil's full name. His name is Phil Scipiora. Yeah, Sipiora, Scipiora.
Yeah, so I think he's doing a little bit of freelance work for Human Art right now.
Yeah, I just want to mention his full name because I realized that. Also, can I say something else about the earlier part of the conversation?
Yeah, totally.
I realized I told this story about the 2 town cars, and I said that Lisa told me, text me when you land. But like that was before we had text. We had flip phones. So she would have said, call me when you land. And I just kind of let that slide. But then I realized if someone was smart enough to do their homework, they would think I made up the whole story. But that part of it was obviously...
Or she would have said, I got a new high score in Snake.
That's exactly what it was, too. Snake.
Yeah. The Nokia phones, those things were bricks.
Exactly what it was.
You couldn't hurt those. They didn't need a case.
No.
But they made them, and you could get them at any mall kiosk. And it was kiosk.
Anywhere. I think you're asking the question, where would you go? I don't have advice for where someone should work, and I don't think it's about the name on the door. I think it's about opportunity. And I have no regrets about the moves I made, but I think that if I could make something different, I would have wanted to work for someone that would have pushed me probably.
Right. And I've been racking my brain since I graduated this quarter. And you know what I'm afraid is the truth is that you kind of just have to jump, because like there's no way to experience a place without.
I don't think your career really starts till your second job anyway. I think you're still kind of a doctor's, it's like a residency. You're just kind of getting paid to continue to learn, and just take advantage of it and learn and enjoy it, because you're still figuring it out. And your first move to your second job is really where it starts, I think.
On your resume, in that first one, you just put Mulligan.
Yeah, but I had that was a big name agency on my resume, so I proudly left it on there, and I still have a lot of friends that we worked well together at Ogilvy, New York, so it was great.
Yeah.
So I forget your questions. Let's do more. Let's do this and wrap it up so the listeners can get on with their day.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it hasn't been 3 days long for
that's right.
everyone.
That's true.
Not for everyone. Oh, look, I had this note to set a timer at the beginning. I didn't even come close to doing that.
No.
Well, I just wanted to...
You want to do the James Lipton questions?
I did, but there was one more. It's Natalie Kim's every podcast question. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh yeah, best advice.
It was.
So I know what my answer was. I'm not sure that's the answer though, but I'm going to tell you what my answer was when you asked me on the spot.
I liked it.
So we recorded this and it didn't record. My mom said to me, "Don't make a decision until you have to," right? And I think that's playing into my sort of anxiety of trying to play out the scenarios before I really even have to make that decision. And I think there's part of that is that things change. Part of that is that your answer reveals itself to you without forcing it. And part of that is that, like, to relieve the pressure, this constant pressure of making a decision. So I don't know if that's the best advice I've ever heard. Another one is a classic one my grandfather said, but I don't think he made up, which is like, if you always tell the truth, you'll never have to remember what you've said.
Right.
That's classic. I also had this is a weird one. Like, I had this weird device when I was a kid where I knew that I couldn't predict the future. Like, it's impossible to predict the future. Like, that's just a truth. So I would imagine a worst case scenario in great detail to guarantee and prevent it from happening. So I'd play it all out in my mind, and I'd say, okay, good, cool, that won't happen.
Did you write it down or anything?
No, I just imagined it, because that's the power. Like, if you imagine something's going to happen, it will 100% of the time something else will happen.
Unless you have superpowers.
Right, which clearly we don't.
Right.
So I think my advice is, like, you don't have to make it. It's not super profound. I don't know.
I like it. I think simplicity plays a part in some of the best advice. It reminded me of something I heard somewhere that was, don't make a decision on an empty stomach or a full stomach.
Right.
Meaning, like, not out of desperation, and don't make some huge decision when you're really comfortable, like quitting your day job to take on your side hustle. Yeah. Because that's where you're passionate.
Oh, I told the story about about my surgery. When I say I told the story, it's like the story that didn't record. Right. I had surgery a few weeks ago to repair a hernia, and they tell you on your discharge papers not to make big decisions. Like, when you leave the hospital, don't make any big decisions. Don't sign any legal papers.
You're on drugs.
You're, like, not quite all there.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the podcast, when this podcast published, it didn't push to LinkedIn because it had to be reauthorized. And in the bathroom, I was going to the bathroom, I had my phone in my hand, and I basically took down the whole show, like, by accident, because I hit something that just, like, basically deleted, and it was gone. Like, you couldn't find it. Like, you couldn't find it anywhere. And I was like, oh, crap. And my son's like, what? My son thinks I'm bleeding or something's wrong with the surgery. I'm like, I just destroyed the podcast. I ended up being able to reverse engineer it back to life. But, like, the other thing is awesome fucking Chinese proverb, never write a letter in anger. And I would say you should definitely write the letter in anger. Just do it on a document that can't accidentally send, do it separately from your email, but write it, get it out of you, express it, work through it.
Yeah.
So
get it out. Don't give it.
Don't give it out. Get it out. Don't send it out. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And then since you and I are, I love talking pop culture with you. I wanted to end on James Lipton's list of questions that he always asks.
These are hard, by the way.
They are, and I'll skip some of them.
Even after sleeping on them for a couple of days, I still feel like a couple of them stumped me.
Well, let's give it another shot.
Okay, that's
either
good.
way.
Yeah, we'll figure something out.
What's your favorite word?
God, I don't have. I said recalcitrant the other day, which is just such a negative word. I don't know why I would say recalcitrant. I don't have a favorite word. You know what? I think that my favorite word is the right one. Is the most accurate one. Whatever the most accurate and expressive word is, that's my favorite word.
Hey, what's the best answer? That one. Write that down for me.
I don't like best. I don't like better. I don't like those words. I like accurate, powerful, descriptive words. I love language, and I feel like there's a word for everything you're trying to say. And I feel like my favorite word is the one that you should use. And it's almost never vague, like better.
Right.
Okay, that's
why you're a copywriter.
I'm a writer, so I have a hard time with naming a word. I don't play favorites with words.
Okay, cool. What
Fuck, for sure.
Sure. Okay, cool. So we'll skip. What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck is my favorite curse word. It does everything you want. And I think I mentioned Billie Eilish, my obsession of the week, who says this word as if it's just an exhale. She's just talking about it. She's just the coolest. She's so cool.
There's something about it that it's just honest. And I'm not talking about Billie's music. I love that too. But about cursing in general, there's just something really honest about it.
I don't trust people who can't do it, who are self-conscious.
Yeah.
I do, but whatever.
Well, the people in my life, from my experience, who never cursed, were generally sweet people that were, rooted in religion and things. And it's like, if you're not cursing so you don't go to hell, that's not honest.
No.
But
I think when you hear people say words they shouldn't say, and specifically the word fuck, to me, that is basically a crack in a window to someone's truth and emotion. So you're not basically just talking at that point. You're expressing like an authenticity. That's kind of what it is. That's kind of where it comes from, back to the Billie Eilish thing. I think she's doing that because she's just like kind of experiencing that moment. When I refer to it as an exhale, it's almost an unconscious expression.
And I wear that kind of shit on my sleeve. So when I came here, it was such a refreshing thing to be like, okay, I don't have to be a different person at this job than I am at home.
Fair. Good.
What profession other than advertising would you have liked to attempt?
I don't know. I think radio. I think I would. When I was a kid, I always used to pretend I was like a FM radio DJ, and I would like do intros to songs on a turntable. I didn't record it. I like. It's really weird because I'm older, right?
Can you do like a good Casey Kasem?
I used to be able to. I used to be able to, but not so much anymore.
What was that called? America Top?
Top 40 something. But I think, here's what I was going to say. I think that when you get to be my age, which is 50 something, you kind of end up doing what you should be doing. Like,
sure.
Whether it's inertia or just misery, you're going to end up doing the thing. So like for me to find this outlet, specifically this podcast, was kind of my way of scratching the itch of the need to talk into a microphone. So I don't know, advertising led me to something. I think advertising is a great bridge to other expressions of creativity.
To so much. It's really, that's a lot of the allure to me as well. What profession would you absolutely not like to do?
I don't remember what my answer was to that one either. What profession would I not want to do?
This is a new day.
I don't remember my answer. I don't know the answer. There's so many. Oh yeah, waiter. I can't wait on people.
Oh, I can see. I've done it so much.
Food service. Even advertising account executive would be a tough one. I did that for a minute. It's hard. I guess I don't like being in the middle. I guess I have to feel like if I'm going to work in a restaurant, I want to be the chef. If I'm in an ad agency, I want to be the one making the work. I think I just figured that out. Because my knee-jerk reaction was, ironically, my last job would be an advertising account executive. And the reason isn't because I think it's a shitty job. It's just because to me it minimizes what I feel like my contribution would be. That's my own ego.
Nice. Did you just have an epiphany?
A little epiphany, yeah.
That's
a lowercase, cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. That was fun. I did have one.
Can we make a different podcast about self-discovery, but do it in a funny way and call it Epiphany?
Epiphany. Yeah,
kind of stupid. Yeah. We'll workshop that one. All right, the last one, and if anybody's a huge fan of Inside the Actors Studio, I'm sorry, I did skip a nice handful of them, but the last one, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I would love it. I would love it like a spreadsheet, a chart of like how many people's lives I affected. And I also want to see the ones that I affected badly. I'd really like to learn from it for the rest of eternity. But I really feel like I want to know that somehow I had an effect on people. And this sounds really douchey and like egocentric to me. And I hope I don't come off as like a self-indulgent. But I feel like if I'm not making enough money here not to matter. And the reason why I started teaching is because I wanted to matter. Even in an intimate setting like this one, like, so for me to know, like, look at this, look what you helped do would be pretty badass.
Yeah.
I think that'd be badass.
Well, you definitely, one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast was because you made an impression.
That's cool.
On me. So there's one name for your spreadsheet. I just picture you. St. Peter's like, here's the list that you wanted. And you're like, yeah, could you share that with me? Like, could you send that to Dan.Pauls?
Yeah. Also, it's weird to me that heaven has Excel.
Right.
Like, that seems like incongruent. Maybe it's numbers, the Apple one, right? Maybe it's a spreadsheet like that. So that's all the questions? We're done?
Well, I mean, there's more if you want to chat.
No, we're good. So, well, thank you for doing it. I really appreciate your wanting to talk to me about me. That's weird. It's cool, though.
Nah, man, you made me feel at home here when I came at Summer at the Circus, and so really you're helping me complete this kind of arc.
Nice, very cool. So how can listeners find you?
My portfolio, I'm resisting the urge to say something negative about it. It's at brianrevels.com.
brianrevels.com. You just said something negative by just passively aggressively saying you're not going to say something.
I'm sorry.
What do you mean? It's work in progress. Everything's a fucking work in progress.
Right.
It'll get there.
Right.
What's the Brian Revels music?
brianrevelsmusic.com is the music stuff. Which there's not a ton of music there yet, but I have a record coming out in a couple of months, so there shall be.
That's cool. Listeners, man, I appreciate you sitting through this, and hopefully you got something out of it. And Brian, I appreciate you. You can always reach me, as always, at danspodcast@mac.com. But this is a podcast about Brian.
No, I was interviewing you. It's about Dan.
Oh, right. danspodcast@mac.com. Send all spreadsheets to that address, and see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
County homegrown waiting on me. Well, hello, Monticello. I think I set a spell. I got some friends in Jasper County, Lord, they like to treat me well. Hippies on the front porch, some peace up in a pipe. By blue in from the city.